Coming up, while the Nets-Knicks trade for Mikal Bridges is ultimately going to happen, there have been wrinkles on the New York side that could create opportunities for the Nets to get even a little bit more value out of this trade. We break down the financial complications and how Brooklyn benefits, all coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. Over there's Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Marnbeck. We thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We are 100% free on all those great platforms. I'll let you know, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms, they do apply. And Doug, here on a rhyming 4th of July, we talk about the Mikal Bridges trade and when it'll officially go down and how the New York Knicks have some things to sort out.
Oh, yeah, letting freedom ring all over this thing with a little hot Mikal Bridges trade talk. That's just how you're going to do on a 4th of July. You know, maybe everyone else is out enjoying the holiday. Not us, buddy. 5 days a week. This is how you do it. Again, we said this many times. Is everyone else holding up their end of the bargain? Unclear. Are we? 5 days a week. No worries about it. Does not matter what the day or time is. Mikal Bridges trade, not officially in the books yet. Not crazy on a high level, but already signs that at least on the Knicks side, this hasn't been as smooth a process as possible. So from a logistical standpoint, it's not official. There's a reason the NBA is in a moratorium period right now until July 6th. There's a bunch of different reasons for it. One is so teams can work on expanding trades to see if anyone else wants to, wet their beak on whatever's happening around, moves that have already basically been put in through principle. Also, July 6th is when you can start including the next year's or further year out draft picks. So the 2031 draft pick that the Knicks were putting in, that gets them to the calendar. It rolls the calendar over where they can actually officially put it in. So while the trade is not official, and we do believe it's going to go through, there are pieces of this, like you said, that it just doesn't seem as if the Knicks have to include more money. I mean, that's the let's just skip to the end here. The Knicks have to add more money, and that does not maybe for them appear as easy and clean as it did when they first hit the submit button on the trade going through.
Yeah, I wonder if what it comes down to is the New York Knicks maybe sitting there and the ability to pursue Mikal Bridges. Sure, it was conversations they were having. Then you ultimately get to the place where Sean Mark says, yeah, we're willing to talk. Give me everything you got. Okay, great, we'll do it. Then you have the OG Anunoby situation and what that number is going to look like. You got to make sure you bring him back into the fold because we are about going all in now that we've sacrificed a lot of assets to bring Mikal over to New York. The Hartenstein sign away that happens with OKC. All of these things come together here where if you're the New York Knicks and, from a Brooklyn Nets standpoint, it's all good. We're just waiting for the paperwork. But from a Knicks perspective, you've all of a sudden jumbled yourself into some money concerns and then maybe some roster concerns because now you're thinking about, do we need to expand this maybe to a 3-team deal to get a player in here to help our front court? They want to try to make this be as set and forget when it comes to the roster they're going to carry forward and trying to be competitive in the Eastern Conference. So it's not surprising that you're hearing a little bit of this. The curiosity is how the Knicks are going to accomplish it and whether or not the Nets can benefit. We've mentioned it before, just McBride. It's all good. Slide him across the table. That doesn't seem to be something that the Knicks are just going to do to get this done.
Yeah, so the problem is among a few problems. The main problem is that the money just doesn't work out because the Bojan Bogdanovic contract that came back was for $19 million and Bridges at $23 million. And because the Knicks are at a hard cap to the first apron, they have to just send out equal. Yeah, no, they can't. They have to. Well, no, they can aggregate it, but they can't. They can't take back more money. They can't take back more money. So, and so that's where it was so when they first made the trade and the options were laid out in front of them, it's okay, well, I have a lot of different options here. We have Alec Burks sign and trade. Well, that one's off the table because you just signed with the Heat, right? So that one's out. It's well, we got to see what's going to happen with OG. All right, well, we're kind of screwed there because we just paid him the max money. Well, let's see what happens with Hartenstein. Well, now we're going to probably need some backup size here because we lost him and we got Mitchell Robinson and then Jericho Sims or whatever. And now Precious Achiuwa is part of this deal. But the other problem with Precious Achiuwa is that he could be part of the deal for more money, except he would be involved in a sign and trade. And I'm pretty sure you need to sign him for a 3-year contract in order to sign and trade him. And it's like, well,
Right.
the Nets might just say, well, no thanks on that. We're not interested in 3 years of Precious Achiuwa. And so that's kind of a no. And so they are really left with very, very few options. From the Knicks' point of view, because they have to make the money work. Like, let me just point out there again, they're gonna make the money work. Like, they're not gonna renege on the Bridges trade. It's just too high profile. It's for all the reasons that this trade went through. There's no chance it's not going through. But
honestly, we tried our best. We couldn't get it done. We're gonna leave Mikal in Brooklyn.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, but and so they have the Precious piece. That one. I mean, if I'm Achiuwa and I don't want to go to the Brooklyn, then that one seems pretty easy. They have Amadi Diakite, where they could throw him in a second round pick in. That could be the thing that gets done. You have to believe that the Knicks are firm hard against sending Miles McBride over here because his money is perfect. Right around $4.5 million. That is the number basically that gets it done. But you can understand the guy played real leverage playoff minutes. They kind of are short on guards a little bit. I mean, for all the it would make them look so bad if Deuce ended up going in this trade. And if you're a Nets fan, you're sitting there, you're like, oh man, can we just get this guy?
Come
I mean,
on, don't be greedy,
23-year-old,
come on,
23-year-old combo guard that looks great on defense and had some real moments in the playoffs. But I think for those reasons, the Knicks will probably try to work overtime to make sure anything but that happens.
Yeah, and then so I think what becomes interesting from a Nets perspective is what does New York ultimately try to do here? If it becomes down to McBride, then his value probably represents for New York an opportunity to improve their roster in another area before they end up ultimately sending some money in some form or fashion to the Brooklyn Nets, and that's where the third team I think really becomes maybe the most viable option here if they're not just going to go straight up for it. I do have a question when it comes to the Brooklyn Nets maybe looking at McBride and saying, hey, we wouldn't hate bringing him in here as a part of our future core. Are we willing to send another player back to the New York Knicks in, let's say, one Day'Ron Sharpe to help out with their rebounding? We'll break down that possibility and how the Nets get the most value out of New York, all coming up here in just one moment.
All right, before we get to that, tell you about our friends over at Gametime. Look, you're headed to maybe you're headed to MLB game this summer, baseball game. Maybe you're headed to the concert. Maybe you're headed to the comedy show. Maybe you're headed to the theater. Whatever it is, you want to make sure the ticket buying experience is a couple of things. You want to make sure it's the best deal. You want to make sure it's the easiest. And you want to make sure you know exactly what's going to happen when you sit down in your seat. Check. Gametime has you covered all across the board. They just have the best seats available in the best ticket marketplace going, especially for Major League Baseball. If you head over to Gametime right now, probably a little late to get on some of these pretty sick 4th of July deals, like for Reds at Yankees starting at $13. Then head on into the weekend. Red Sox at Yankees starting at $44 on Friday, over $32 here on Saturday. You're not going to beat deals like that. Just a little bit of a helping of what you're going to get over on Gametime. They got last minute deals, they got flash deals, they got zone deals, all in pricing. You get your seat views, which you're going to know exactly what you're getting right when you sit down. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account over at Gametime. Redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.
All right, so as we continue today's Locked On Nets episode, talking about the deal for Mikal Bridges going to the New York Knicks and how, listen, I don't want to say they're bad with paperwork, but New York's struggling here. They don't quite understand how the financials work out. I mentioned there ultimately, when it comes down to Deuce McBride, somewhat tongue-in-cheek about, would the Nets want to add someone else into it? Mostly because when you go and look, and Day'Ron Sharpe has the $3.9 million on his contract coming into the year, it would help the Knicks potentially solve a problem and having some rebounding back into their front court. It wouldn't really help solve the financials because it'd be a marginal gain in terms of the difference if you put McBride into it. I just wonder if, because to your point about bringing another team or how they're going to sort this out, do you think that there's just flat out a hesitancy for New York, who already has given up a lot to get Mikal Bridges to just look and go, all right, take McBride. The numbers work. Thanks so much. Because it does feel like it's that simple, but you can't just give away more value like that. While it'd be easy for the Nets to say, yeah, there it is. Problem solved.
There's no way. There's no way. There's already been like some probable pushback around how much the Knicks gave up in this trade. These are from non-New York sources too. Like these aren't even Brooklyn or Knicks sources. Like if you read sort of just some of the response to this trade around the league, some of these teams are like, come on, like with these trades, like how are we ever going to trade some of these guys? Specifically around Lauri Markkanen. I'll get to your question in 1 second, but just to like give you a high level sort of view of what this looks like, people are, the Jazz looking at trading Lauri Markkanen. Well, they're like, hey, look on over there. I mean, it's a market resetter, especially when we talked about that Gobert trade. It's like the Gobert trade, the Durant trade. It's like, these are never going to happen again. It just takes one team. It just takes one team to just have their sort of like their goals misaligned with everyone else. And now all of a sudden you're like, well, he went for a gajillion picks and Lauri Markkanen is better. So what's going to happen here? Right. And so I think there's already, if you look around the league, this kind of throw your hands up in the air. What are we doing here with these trades? To add in Deuce McBride, who again is like a real NBA rotation player and young.
Yeah.
They just have to be so incentivized to do anything. And they kind of need them too. Because if you look at that Knicks roster, I mean, it's loaded for sure, but they don't have tons of guards and beyond after Brunson. And so they kind of do also need him besides just him being a young, sort of exciting, has already, been better than I think some people expected. So I think that they'll work overtime to do this any way but possible. But if I was the Nets, I would just say, make it worth it. You want to take back the trade, you want to not have this go through, we'll take Bridges back. Like they would never do it. But there's no incentive for the Nets at this point to make it easier, I would say.
Yeah.
Right? Like they don't have the incentive to make it easier. They already got their that's not going to undo the Houston deal. That's done. Like the Nets already got back the thing they needed to get back, which was their own picks. This thing is just, okay, call us when the money works, and when it doesn't, don't call. And it might be that simple.
It's, by the way, we're going into a long holiday weekend. Please don't interrupt the barbecue unless it's for a finalized deal offer. Thank you so much.
Kinda.
Well, yeah,
right. Like,
and it's funny. Like, I think you're right on the net side of it. It's okay. That's that's a you problem, and you're already in a power position, and they can't afford to not get Mikal. Like, so there's nothing on the net side of it. Like, oh boy, what can we do to help? It's just let me know when you sorted out the details. If you're New York, you look over that roster. You ran down to start the episode. I just don't know where else you go here with this, outside of bringing in a third team and trying to find a way to send out other money, which would be the sign and trade for Precious Achiuwa. Like that's really what this comes down to. You mentioned it. The Nets don't want to sign up for a 3-year deal for Precious Achiuwa. So, okay, where can you send him to offset that money that clears the space out? And then at that point, it doesn't really matter from a Brooklyn Nets perspective. You cleared the money, we get the player. There's only an interesting version where, depending on the third team, maybe Brooklyn finds the bad contract, because now it's the second layer. Well, we did the sign with Precious Achiuwa. Now the trade part requires another team that has the space to take him on. If they have an expiring 1-year deal that Brooklyn can take on, then maybe the Knicks end up sending an extra second-round pick over to Brooklyn to make them take on that money for them. Like, that's how all the wheels turn on this thing, and maybe it gets done. But it is hard if you're in New York and your partner in Brooklyn does not care what your problems are right now. And it's very rare, because it's usually, hey, how do we make this work? Because otherwise maybe you would pull the offer or the deal could sour. It's not going to sour. New York is going to get Mikal Bridges. So they're boxed into a corner, which is a nice thing from a Sean Marks Nets perspective.
And by the way, if there's like another option that we're just not seeing, I mean, feel free to let us know in the comments too. I mean, sometimes going through the intricacies of roster construction, salaries, and the CBA, there's a reason it takes like an advanced degree. And I'm not like to fully understand that. I'm not saying that tongue in cheek. It's like the people that work with this, it's like, hope you enjoyed law school, right? Like, because that's kind of what you're going to need to know to make sure you need to do it. And by the way, we're going to have I'm just a little tease here. Next week we'll have
Hello.
a cap expert coming on, I believe, early next week to really break down sort of like where the Nets are, and hopefully at that point we'll be able to break down the end of this trade. So looking forward to that next week. But if there is another option out there that we haven't gone through, I mean, definitely let us know. But like I said, when Burks sign and trade, and then, hey, by the way, the reason we know this is true is go look and see what some of the Knicks, like people that cover the Knicks reactions when Burks signed that deal. People are like, oh no,
Right.
like that doesn't help. And that's how you know they're starting to run out of options when like Alec Burks going off to another team just because he's free to sign with whoever. When he goes out and that money's out the door right around the, sort of the minimum number that you need to make this kind of stuff happen. When that starts to fall off, Knicks people are starting to see that like, oh man, they've really kind of limited their options here. So like I said, if there is something out there, let us know. But it doesn't seem like it's going to be really, really easy. And by the way, when you're the Nets and Sean Marks, when you get into positions of, it sounds weird to say this, like if you get into positions of strength around your path, like so their path is firm now. So they have strength in knowing what their path is. When you know your path, there's clear strength in that because it allows you to make decisions based only on that path. Like before, the reason the Nets fans were like up in arms is because like, well, what do they do? Is this going to make sense? Well, we don't know. Like, does it make sense to get this guy or this guy? We don't know the path. When you know the path, you're actually in a position of extreme bargaining strength because you just can't be forced into doing something that's not aligned with that path. And I think that's like sort of what we're like in a mini way seeing play out here.
And just that problem that you're talking about with the conviction is good for the Brooklyn side of it. And when you mention if there's other options, it's also because when you look over the Knicks roster, there are only so many contracts that they can utilize here within reason of players that they're willing to give up, right? All the core guys are on the books here. They have some random salaries near the back end of it, and that's basically it. And it's what makes, as you said, the Burks contract sign like such a gut punch in trying to facilitate this because he represents some level of value. Coming up here in a second. Let's take a look at that Precious Achiuwa 3-year sign and trade deal. Would you be willing, if you're Brooklyn, to take that on? What would it look like going forward and trying to potentially flip him for additional assets? We'll break that all down as Brooklyn just squeezes the last drop out of New York coming up here in just one moment. All right, tying a bow on the Locked On Nets episode. As we said, happy 4th of July. By the way, we don't want your photos of your fireworks, but I would like people to get into the comments on YouTube and on social and describe them. I don't want the visual. Let me make this very clear. Fireworks for me.
Are you saying that because what I said last night?
Medium.
Are you saying that because of something I said last night, or that's just your independent thought? I know this is going to derail the podcast here, but like, are you thinking that independently? Or you're responding because I said this last night?
No, oh no, why? Oh, do we have a good? Are we crossing our minds melding without crossing over? I like this.
Oh, it's the worst thing ever. I mean, just the videos of the fireworks displays videos. It's like who cares? Who cares?
Yeah.
Don't do it. Don't be the person.
Take it down one more notch. I want
post on social media the picture of the fireworks you're looking at. Fireworks are already boring to look at when you're there. They're already one of the most underwhelming experiences you can have live in person with your own eyes. I mean, imagine.
See, now now we will divide here. This is a good derail. We'll get back. Don't worry. We'll talk about the contract stuff. We're going to get back into it. But I love fireworks are great if you're there watching it. I don't need to experience somebody else's experience of watching fireworks though. I love a good firework.
I mean, they're not a negative experience. I'm just saying the amount of pomp and circumstance that goes into the viewing of it compared to the actual payoff is very low. As an independent like observational thing, it's cool. I have no idea how to make a firework. I couldn't blast something into the air to make all colors. So technologically, chemically, all good. I'm just saying that like the amount of work that goes into going and watching them and then what you actually get in return on viewing it is a very, very low return on, entertainment investment, I would say.
Full disclosure as we get back into the conversation around the Knicks and the Nets, Doug Norrie did just have a in-person firework experience last evening, so I feel like we're getting some real one-to-one on what it took to get that done.
These opinions are solidified. I didn't need last night's experience, which was lovely, by the way. I didn't need last night's experience to solidify that feeling. I'm just saying that it didn't change my mind about it.
Now, that being the case, something else that I was trying to track down here too, as you're listening to a basketball podcast. Don't worry. We knew that when we started this. Looking at these contracts and making them match. I mentioned this before we got on the episode because we were talking about some salaries that are there. I was trying to also find the rookie scale for NBA players coming in because I said the name Dautier and you were you were like, this cannot be the spelling of what I'm looking at. But that's the first round rookie that the Knicks took as well, who was the player. He was the highest draft prospect that the Nets brought in, ranked 32 overall on it might be ESPN's big board, but they brought them in for an in-person visit. This would be to me. So to tie it into the Precious Achiuwa, all right, you want us to take on the Precious Achiuwa contract? Not a big deal. Weak draft class, we get it. Why don't you go ahead and throw in a prospect that out of the limited pool of guys we brought in, we certainly looked at him and maybe liked him. I wonder, and I'll even expand it to the NBA at large as far as value. I wonder if many NBA teams would be throwing up their hands or scoffing at a weak draft class, late first round prospect that the Knicks took to go along with maybe the Nets eating that 3-year Precious Achiuwa deal. Like, are you open to that version of it, regardless of whether or not it feels like it's getting lopsided by NBA standards?
I mean, I'll be honest with you. Like, I'm just in the. It's so funny to be like, this is like so petty. I'm in the mode of whatever, like whatever you can get. I actually don't even care. I don't even think I'd do an evaluation on it at this point. Just be like, more you get. It's like my kid. It's
More,
like you get. It's like I'm gonna give
more.
you 5 grapes, and the automatic renegotiate is I wanted 7. If I had said 3, it would have been 5. If I had said 10, it would have been 15. Like it's always just a little more than whatever the first number thrown out is. And I can't stand it when my kid does it to me. But in this case, I'm going to love it if the Nets do it. Is that
Right.
so at this point, we were already pretty happy with the return on the Mikal Bridges trade. If you can just throw in anything else, some name that I have no idea about, some draft pick that we won't even be alive to see the Nets use, I don't care. Get it all in. Like it's all to
Right.
me very, very much worth it. So I know that's not high level analysis around what like the specificity around what you just said, but
More.
the theme for me is, they get more. Like this is even better. And so and I think it's going to be the case. I think that there's going to have to be something added to this. Whether it's just, some prospect that's unlikely to ever see the court, whether it's some low level draft pick that is unlikely ever to be really realized in any functional way. It's clear to me at this point that it can't go through as it currently stands. And I doubt that the Nets are going to do anything that's going to make it easier for the Knicks. And I think like that theme at least kind of is true throughout.
Okay. So that being the case, and I agree with you, like, hey, more, like, a little bit extra. Who cares? A little bit extra. Precious Achiuwa, though, we both agree we don't want to take on a 3-year deal. We don't want to have money on the books, all that stuff. But if it ends up being that New York is sitting there like, yeah, we're striking out. We can't find these partners. And it's what kind of second round pick, a little bit of extra draft capital do we need to throw in here for you to take this 3-year deal? I wouldn't be overly concerned. Like Precious Achiuwa is not a perfect player by any stretch, but I guess depending on what the contract is, it wouldn't be impossible for me to see more value in Precious Achiuwa when it comes to the trade deadline, when it comes to another team and being able to move him. I don't find that the worst case to take back a contract that's beyond a year. And I said I'm contradicting myself because I've been very clear about either expiring or at most a 2-year deal. But I wouldn't hate Precious Achiuwa in this situation, mostly because it's not like New York is looking at him even and saying, well, we're happy to give you Precious Achiuwa. It's just that we don't have anywhere else to look for value to be able to get this done potentially.
Yeah, and honestly, I think at this point too, it might just be more on him too. Like if he doesn't want to come play in Brooklyn, like you are, like it might just be more of him choosing. Like the Nets don't even get to choose. It might not even be like the Nets kind of option here. And by the way, one more thing too, I'm like 95% sure that the 3-year deal has to be part of that sign and trade. I think you have to guarantee money out to have be part of a sign and trade. So again, correct me if I'm wrong about that one, but there's a few different moving parts within this thing that doesn't make it like the absolute easiest thing in the world. But I don't think the Nets are precluded from doing any real deal. I mean, honestly, too, like if you look at the roster, like they got kind of nobody on the roster right now. This is an underrated thing heading into summer league, but because of these deals being paused and because the Nets not wanting to make any signings because they're not exactly sure who's going in and who's going out, and because like Cam Johnson and Dorian Finney-Smith are still on the roster, but then it might not be. The Nets roster is kind of like nobody. Like right now, it's I just had it in front of me, but it's it's Simmons, and we'll see about how much he's even going to be available. It's
ready
DFS.
to go, locked in.
What's that?
Ben Simmons, ready to go, locked in, day one. What's the problem?
Right. But like we already know Cam Johnson on the trade block, Dorian Finney-Smith on the trade block. Seems like Dennis Schroeder's on the trade block. After that, and those guys would all bring back players because of the money. I mean, almost for sure, because like they wouldn't be trading him into under the cap teams. But after that, it's like Cam Thomas, Daron Sharp, Noah Clowney, Tariq Whitehead. We're not even positive like how healthy he is. KBD, Keita Bates-Diop, Jalen Wilson, and then the guys they drafted this year. I mean, there's like nobody on this roster. And so adding a Precious Achiuwa, kind of adding any functional person that can go up and run down the court is probably worth it for the Nets at this point. So from that standpoint, sure.
And Bogdanovich,
locking yourself into like money or whatever, I'm not totally positive.
Yeah, it does become interesting. I find it fascinating how the Knicks, end up getting out of this. And I think, and to your point, what's funny about the NBA? Oh my God, look how much you gave up to get Mikal Bridges. Like, what are you doing to us? We're all trying to make deals here, and you've really screwed us. I love if I could tinfoil hat on this, the 4th of July, the NBA being like, well, you really screwed us with how much you gave up for Mikal Bridges. Good luck trying to get yourself out of this now from a financial standpoint. We're not going to help you. Like, we're not going to help you get this done. Have fun sending Deuce McBride to the Brooklyn Nets. You know what I mean? Like, it's like we're not going to do the deal with you. We're not going to get you across the line. Now, if they choose to trade him to get that value, or maybe that's what it is too. Yeah, we'll help you. Give us Deuce McBride. Like that's how we're willing to help you, to take the player that you don't want to give up. And this, by the way, just from a high level, and we've seen this with the Brooklyn Nets, right? You trade everything away. You want to go get your stars. You want to make this team that you think can help you have deep playoff runs. Then you get backed into corners like this where you look at your roster, you have some needs you're going to want to fill. It's not quite perfect. And you realize that it's not just as simple as going out and making that next deal. That's where the Knicks are. And unlike Brooklyn, who is saying, yeah, a little more. We have nothing to worry about here. New York is saying, we got to go. Like, this is the window. Making the trade for Mikal Bridges confirmed that we need to, in the next 2 years, be a team that's going to the Eastern Conference Finals, that thinks we can make an NBA Finals before extensions kick in for Jalen Brunson, before the eligibility at the beginning of October for Mikal Bridges on his extension comes around. Like, all of these things are going to start happening really fast for New York, and you get painted into a corner of, we told everyone that we're going for it. And now everybody knows that, and asking for favors is not exactly something anybody's like, oh my God, New York, how do we help you? How do we help you get across the line as you're trying to compete and bounce us, right? Like that's a big part of this. Helping Brooklyn accomplish something. A lot of teams are like, yeah, that's interesting. You guys aren't in our way. New York stands in the path of a lot of teams trying to make deep playoff runs.
Yeah, super interesting. So I think by Saturday we'll know. Like I said, that's when the moratorium ends on July 6th. I think maybe we'll probably get some news in the next couple of days too, where like it's just sort of leaked out about what's kind of happening, is my guess. But as with always, you got to wait till the last
Brooklyn
second.
Easy
with some of these things. Exciting stuff happening next week. Like we said, we'll go over some cap situations where the Nets are going forward. We'll start to look at sort of like maybe we'll get some clarification around some of these possible trades. Also take a look ahead to Summer League, which starts next week. Nets will put together probably a pretty interesting team for Summer League because some of these guys actually might get real run when the season starts. That'll be coming up next week. In the meantime, make sure you're subscribed over to Locked On Nets on YouTube.
Because, baby, you're a firework. Come on, show them what you're worth. Make them go, oh, 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 as you shoot across the sky. That is Tyler Perry's daughter, Katie.
Yeah, sure. That's right. How the family tree looks. We'll be one of the all-time great poets. We're back tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.